Hello YouTube, Mobile Technology Reviews here, and today I'm going to be doing a hardware review of the Samsung Galaxy Proclaim from Straight Talk. So this is one of Straight Talk's older phones. It was released about a year and a half ago. And it's a very budget-oriented Android handset that uses Straight Talk's 3G network. So when this phone was new, it retailed for about 160, 170 bucks, but now obviously you can find it cheaper, as this phone is slightly outdated and an older phone. But just to start off, I'm just going to show you guys my review unit here. As you can see, it is a little bit beat up. There is a bunch of scratches. There's some cracks. It's not in very good shape. It's been abused. This is a loaner. This is not my phone. I'm reviewing it for somebody. So this isn't the perfect example of this phone, but nevertheless, I'm still gonna try my best to do a hardware review of this device. So let's start off with the thing that you see first, which is this display. This is a 3.5-inch TFT LCD display with a resolution of 320 by 480 pixels, and that means it's 165 pixels per inch. So that's pretty terrible. That's probably the lowest resolution you're going to see on an Android handset. And keep in mind, this is a very budget end handset. But 165 ppi is not very good, and the screen is very grainy. It's not very sharp, and again, it's not very large. It's at only 3.5 inches. The screen here is very plasticky. It's not made out of glass. It's very plasticky and made out of plastic, and I'm not a huge fan of it. It feels very cheap. So that's about it for the screen. Let's just take a quick look around the device now. So over here on the left hand side, we have our 2-button volume rocker. Has decent tactile response. It doesn't stick out very far, so right here we have our micro SD card slot, which is nice to see on a phone. Most phones, Android handsets these days, do not have micro SD card slots, and this slot can support micro SD cards up to 32 gigabytes. Down here on the bottom, we have our micro USB port and our microphone. On the right hand side, we have our power button. Very typical of Samsung to put this power button on the right hand side of the device. And up top here, we have our 3.5mm headphone jack. On the back, we have our 3.1 megapixel camera, our Samsung logo here, and our small mono speaker. And on the front, we obviously have the screen, which we already talked about. We have some proximity and light sensors up here, our earpiece, and 4 capacitive touch buttons down here at the bottom. Sorry for the reflection of the light on the screen of this phone. As you can see, it's very reflective. Apologies for that. But on the back here, we have this cheap plastic back cover. Again, typical of Samsung. Has this kind of dimpled pattern. It feels pretty good in the hand. It has a hump right here, which is kind of reminiscent of the original Galaxy S phone. And the edges here are slightly beveled, which creates a very nice in-hand feel. And I like it quite a bit. Speaking of in-hand feel, I think this phone is pretty nice to hold. I mean, I'm not used to holding a 3.5-inch phone. I'm used to holding my Nexus 4, which has a 4.7-inch screen. And so this is obviously very different. I think this is actually slightly more comfortable to hold because the phone kind of contours to your hand with these sloped and beveled sides. Plus, it's smaller, it's just easier to handle. So if you're looking for a very small, compact phone that's going to be very easy to hold, this is a nice option. Now let's go ahead and talk about the camera. This camera is 3.1 megapixels, which by today's standards is not very good at all. But on a budget handset like this, that's actually a decent resolution. Most cameras, or excuse me, most phones in this price range come with about a 2 megapixel camera. And I know 3.1 megapixels isn't that much of an improvement over a 2 megapixel shooter. This still does take a lot better pictures. Later I'll have a comparison video between my LG A40G, which has a 2 megapixel shooter, versus this, and you guys can see which takes better pictures. But anyway, this camera is decent at most for this budget handset. It takes average photos. It does record video at VGA, so no HD here, which is expected from such a low-priced Android handset. The speaker down here is very tinny and not very loud. It's just your basic mono speaker. Samsung didn't spend a lot of time working on sound quality with this handset. The power button here feels similar to the volume rocker. Decent tactile response, but I don't think it's raised enough off the surface of the phone. Plus, this power button is downright tiny, and it's very hard to feel, very hard to press because it's so small. Around the sides of this phone, we have a black chrome-like rim that runs around this phone. I think it looks pretty nice. But as you can see right here, it has gotten chipped. So it's not extremely well made, this little chrome surround. It does add some visual interest to the phone though, which I like. The earpiece on this phone produces relatively crisp tones. Phone calls on this are pretty good. Our callers could hear us just fine, and we could hear them just fine. It's not out of this world good, but it's decent, and it'll suit most people's needs as far as call quality goes. Have a look around the phone here. It's actually not a bad looking phone. Now let's take a look under the back cover. Right here we have our pry point to rip this back cover off here. Right here we have our 1500 milliamp lithium ion battery pack. That's average in size for a phone with a 3.5-inch screen. It doesn't need to be that large, as this battery does not need to power a whole lot. But I kind of wish they would have put a larger battery, but you know, for the price point that this handset is offered at, I'm not going to complain. Right here we have our mono speaker, our camera, and that's about it. Let me just pop this back on. Just snaps back on with a couple of clips. And as I said, this does have a micro SD card slot on the side, which is nice. You don't have to take the battery out every time you want to put a card in. I like that. So now let's go ahead and talk about the guts of this phone. So this Android handset is powered by a 1 gigahertz processor. It's a single core processor. It's coupled with 512 megabytes of RAM, and this phone is running Android 2.3 Gingerbread. So on paper, this phone is not very impressive. That 1 gigahertz Snapdragon processor is, quite frankly, slow and outdated, and it doesn't perform well. I'm just going to go and say it. It does not perform well on this phone. Well, I wish they would have put a little bit faster of a processor in this thing. But again, this is a budget handset, and you know, I'm a little bit spoiled by the fast processing power of my Nexus 4. So using this handset, which has that very slow processor, is quite a change for me. But also, as you can see right here, the screen is curved. As you can see right here, it curves up, and it curves up right here also. So this has a very slight curve to the screen. I think that also adds some visual interest to this phone. As far as your antennas go, I mean, you've got Wi-Fi, 802.11 BG, no N. Um, you do have Wi-Fi hotspot on this phone. This phone does have Bluetooth. I'm not sure the exact version, but it is an older version. I'm assuming Bluetooth 2.0. Um, as I said earlier in the video, this phone is a 3G phone. It will not work on 4G. This phone has antennas that support 2G Edge and 3G signals over either Verizon or Sprint's network, as this is a CDMA phone, not a GSM phone. So really, that's about it for this hardware review of this Samsung Galaxy Proclaim from Straight Talk. I will have a software review out soon, so you can have a look at the nostalgic Android 2.3 operating system. Yeah, I hope you liked the video. Catch you guys next time. See ya.